Hi, I'm Dr. Yoni Friedhoff. I'm an assistant professor of family medicine at the University of Ottawa, and this month I have the pleasure of working with Dr. Eric Sudicki. Yesterday, we were wandering behind the office for a walk between patients, and we walked by a chip wagon. Behind the chip wagon were the buckets, empty buckets, of the deep fryer oil. And I asked, could I have a bucket, because I thought I'd use it to brine a turkey. We got the bucket back to the office, took a look on the side of the container, and we were both blown away by just how much trans fat there was in this fryer oil. And so today, we bought ourselves a large fries, and we're gonna figure out how much trans fat is in them.
So we found a paper online suggesting that there's around 17.1 grams of fat in 100 grams of deep fried French fries. Let's have a look and see how much is in the large fry.
So what I've done is I've brought my scale from home. We've got a plate on it that we've zeroed so that we can just measure how much our French fries weigh. There's a lot of French fries. This was a large fries, by the way. Plenty of people do order large fries. Fries.
So if you can see, we're at 582 grams of deep fried French fries.
And we're missing, of course, the fat that got put onto this paper. But I suppose it would have done that anyhow if we'd ordered these ourselves.
So now we'll do some math and find out just how much added fat is in those fries, knowing that there's 17.1 grams per 100 grams.
So I brought my scale from home, we zeroed it with a plate, we poured all the French fries on it, and turns out we bought 581 grams of French fries from the chip wagon. So now the question is, okay, how much trans fat is in that? So I'm rolling off camera to get this bucket, which is the liquid deep fried shortening that this particular chip wagon uses, and they were genuinely kind enough to give me the bucket. And you can zoom in on that, or we will zoom in on that for you. So for every 9.2 grams of fat from this bucket, there are 1.9 grams of trans fat, which is actually a staggering amount. And so what we can then look at is, okay, what is the weight of the fat on those fries? And then convert that to tell us how much trans is actually in this particular large fry.
So we know that there's 1.9 grams of trans fat per 9.2 grams of shortening in the bucket. In the fries, we know that the fries are 17.1% fat per 100 grams. Doing the math, there's unfortunately 20.4 grams of trans fat in one large serving of fries.
Now, to remind you, Health Canada's Trans Fat Task Force, the head of that task force described trans fat as a toxin that was unsafe in any amount in our food supply. But to give you an idea of how much trans fat that is, let's talk shortening that you can buy rather than chip wagons.
We have to thank my wife Janice, registered dietitian, for finding the worst trans fat culprit in our local grocery store, which was No Name brand shortening, which has 3.5 grams of trans fats per 2 teaspoons. So let's see how many servings of shortening would be equivalent to one large fry that we just weighed.
So, according to the math, in that No Name shortening, which again, I gotta remind you, was the worst thing we could find in the supermarket, and again, thanks Janice. Well, this particular large fries from the chip wagon near my office, it contains this much shortening's worth of trans fats. I mean, this is roughly 10 or 11 and change teaspoons of shortening, and that is what you will be getting from a trans fat perspective every time you order chip wagon fries. So this isn't trivial. Trans fat is a toxin that's unsafe in the food supply. The question is, why is it still in the food supply? It was 2005 that Health Canada's Trans Fat Task Force said we should regulate it out of the food supply.
10 years ago.
Yeah, and here we are today, and it's still being sold in really large quantities. The good news though, Eric and I recently learned that there will be soon something happening in regard to trans fats here in Canada. You know, it's a shame that it's taken this long, but certainly it's good news that it's finally happening.